Hi, it's Katrina. Number 10. Lost City of Giants. In 2012, there were reports of an incredible discovery deep in the jungle of Ecuador. A structure, some kind of hidden castle in the forest, was found overgrown with foliage. The structure was 260 feet tall, just as wide, and made up of enormous blocks of stone that weighed 2 tons each. The structure was dubbed part of the Lost City of Giants, and there were supposedly giant tools found in the area as well. What made the discovery so crazy was that this particular part of the Ecuadorian jungle is home to a legend which says a race of massive humans once lived in a great city of stone. The structure was so big that at first, many scientists claimed it was nothing but a normal geological feature. It almost looks like a huge cliff in the jungle. However, researchers have found holes in the blocks of stone, along with almost perfect 60-degree angles, everything suggesting the giant structure had been shaped by intelligent and possibly giant hands. Some researchers believe the lost structure could be the mausoleum of Atahualpa, who was the last Incan emperor captured by the Spanish. His tomb is said to be filled with more gold than any other tomb in the world. But the most interesting part, perhaps, is the giant theory. Ecuadorian lore claims there was a race of giants living in colossal cities, but history forgot them as the centuries wore on. Locals even claim they have discovered the bones of these giants hidden in nearby caves and throughout other parts of Ecuador and Brazil. Even though the discovery was made a decade ago, there still hasn't been much in the way of new information. There appear to be some more structures hidden in the jungle, but teams have had a difficult time reaching the area because it's so dangerous. Number 9. The Giants at West Point. On July 30th, 1867, there was a reprint in the Arkansas Gazette that had been ripped from the Circe record 3 days prior. The news report claimed that on the McDaniel farm, just a few miles below West Point, locals came across an unusual number of human bones. These bones were discovered where the river makes a bend, and it looked like they had been uncovered by the flowing water. The reason the bones were so strange was that they appeared way too big for any ordinary person. Dr. Diener, who went to investigate the bones, claimed he could hold one of the jawbones over his and could have worn it like a chin strap. The other bones were much larger than his own as well, and there were a lot of them. It looked as though the river had washed away the surface of an extremely ancient burial ground, revealing pale, ghostly white bones sticking out from the sand. According to property tax records from 1867, McDaniel was in possession of over 5,000 acres of land beneath West Point, Arkansas. This was on the southern bank of the Little Red River. There is definitely some merit to the story, but we don't know what happened after. Time skips in the records until October 1883, when the Smithsonian's Bureau of Ethnology supposedly visited McDaniel's farm. Much of the property had been washed out by a flood years earlier, and there appeared to be no more traces of the giant bones left. Number 8. The Giants of Nevada. According to legend, there was a race of very peculiar giants living in the Nevada region. These giants had fiery red hair and practiced cannibalism. The Paiute Native Americans called them Si-Te-Ka and were afraid of the giants. It was said that the flaming-haired big people would come into their camps, drag people away, take them back to their lairs, and eat their bones. As far as the Paiute legends go, there weren't very many of these giants. They lived in a small band and dwelled inside caves. And since there were more Paiute tribesmen than giants, they came up with a plan to get rid of them for good. They tracked them down to their cave, shot flaming arrows into the entrance, and suffocated all of the giants inside. This supposedly happened at Lovelock Cave in Nevada. In 1911, the Sunset Guano Mining Company went into the cave specifically to extract bat poop. But during their mining processes, the miners discovered artifacts, including bones and weapons. But this was the early 20th century, and miners weren't all that concerned about excavations. Archaeologists didn't get involved for at least another decade or so, and most of the stuff had already been destroyed. But researchers supposedly found the skeletal remains of people who stood roughly 8 feet tall. Unfortunately, these skeletons are not on display anywhere. The artifacts recovered from Lovelock Cave can be seen at the Humboldt Museum, but not the skulls. Still, if the skulls and bones are indeed out there hidden in some back room, it would mean the Paiute legends are real, and there really were giants in Nevada. Number 7. The Giant of Castelnau. In the year 1890, Georges Vacher de la Pouge discovered a Bronze Age burial mound dating back to the end of the Neolithic period. At the time, the Stone Age transitioned into the Bronze Age. As George was digging through the sediment, he came across 3 bone fragments. He found a humerus, a tibia, and a femoral midshaft. The 3 bone fragments became instantly famous because they, without any shadow of a doubt, belonged to a human who must have stood 11 feet 6 inches tall. What makes this discovery so much more exciting than all the others is that we actually have photo evidence. The 3 bone fragments were photographed, and Georges' scientific findings were published in the French journal La Nature, Volume 18, Issue 888. And over the next few decades, the bones were repeatedly studied by legitimate professors. The bones went to the University of Montpellier, were examined by some of the most brilliant minds of the time, such as M. Sabatier, M. Delage, and Dr. Paul-Louis-André Kiener. The latter even admitted the bones almost certainly belonged to someone of a very tall race. Giant of Castelnau, as whoever these bones belonged to became known as, was a real person. Scientific evidence shows that he belonged to a race of humans who could have grown upwards of 15 feet tall. However, no other proof except the 3 bones has ever been found, and so, technically, no real scientist will ever admit the presence of giants in Europe. Number 6. The Sauk Rapids Giant Skeleton. The end of the 19th century in America was a time of great superstition and astonishing discoveries. Starting around the 1850s, people in the eastern United States kept stumbling across burial grounds and gigantic bones. The burial grounds have mostly been connected to the Mississippian culture that dominated much of the eastern region. But the gigantic bones have been a little more difficult to make sense of. So many of them have been found, it seems indisputable that some very large and very strong people did indeed live in America thousands of years ago. Take yet another discovery from the 1860s. This one happened just before the discovery in Arkansas, printed in the Sauk Rapids Sentinel on December 18, 1868. The author of the report claimed that the largest skeleton in the world had been found. Then, days later, the skeleton wound up missing, supposedly sold off to a circus, and never seen again. The bones were allegedly discovered by employees with the local water company. They were quarrying rock for a dam near the site of Lions Park when they accidentally found the massive skeleton embedded in a solid chunk of granite. The skeleton was approximately 10 feet 9.5 inches tall from the tip of his head to the flats of his heel, and he would have weighed about 900 pounds. Sadly, no one knows how legit this story actually is. However, the Sauk Rapids Sentinel certainly believed it. The reporters believed in the giant enough that they wrote a follow-up story on December 25th, detailing how the skeleton had mysteriously vanished. It had supposedly been taken away by a man named General Thomas on a night train. Number 5. The Skull of Goliath. Bonnie Nelson, a woman who considers herself something of a Christian archaeologist, believes the head of Goliath is buried in Jerusalem on the hill of Golgotha. And she's not alone in her assumption. Christian scientists are always trying to discover physical evidence to corroborate stories in the Bible, and the account of David and Goliath is a big one. We know that David was indeed the king of Israel, and that his enemy Goliath was a Philistine. However, biblical legend says Goliath was upwards of 9 feet tall, a very literal giant. And although David was only a normal man, he fought the giant bravely and won. The issue is that nobody's ever found proof of a giant in Israel. We don't know if Goliath was part of a race of giants, if he was the last of the legendary Nephilim, fallen angels who came to earth as twisted giants to breed with human women, or if he even existed at all. Number 4. The City of Giants. A forgotten city in Ethiopia, dating back to the 10th century AD, has just been discovered by a group of archaeologists. They made the shocking discovery in eastern Ethiopia, in the Harla region, and came across a myriad of artifacts all the way from Egypt to China. Researchers say that judging strictly by the number of foreign items discovered, this city is now proof that Ethiopia was directly connected to just about every empire on the planet. But here's where things get a little more gigantic. According to BBC Ethiopia correspondent Emmanuel Igunza, Harla was home to a myth of giants. The local residents have always been aware of the ruins of the ancient city, but to them, the ruins didn't seem right. They thought the stone blocks were too big and that there was no way they could have been lifted and put into place by average humans. And so the local Ethiopians began telling stories of giants, and some even believe their own ancestors could potentially be giants. No actual physical proof of this has been found. The archaeologists have found an ancient graveyard on site, but it wasn't filled with the bones of giants. Number 3. The kinametsin. In the mythos of the Aztec, the kinametsin was a race of gigantic people who lived in Mexico before ordinary humans showed up. The Aztec believed that the great city of Teotihuacan was actually built by the giants before their civilization came to a crashing end. Remember that the Aztec didn't build the city, located just outside modern Mexico City. Teotihuacan, which translates roughly to the place where men become gods, was built by an entirely unknown race of people. Even modern archaeologists and historians have no idea who stacked those stones together to create one of the biggest cities of Mesoamerica. To make sense of the huge structures, towering pyramids, and imposing temples, the Aztec blamed the giants. They said that the kinametsin lived in central Mexico before them, but that they had angered the gods. The gods then rained down calamities upon them, and the giants were wiped off the face of the earth, and their monuments left deserted. Number 2. China's Graveyard of Giants. A graveyard of giants has just been discovered in China. This is a 100% legitimate modern-day discovery as it just happened. It's been well documented, and there's no getting around what was found. Archaeologists were excavating an ancient Stone Age settlement in Jiaojia in China's Shandong province. They unearthed a whole heap of amazing things from the site, including over 104 ancient houses, 205 graves, and 20 sacrificial pits. This place was a bustling city in the Neolithic days, filled with modern humans going about their daily lives. But what makes the ancient city so shocking is that the people who lived here were actually giants. One of these skeletons was measured at 6 feet 2 inches tall, and he wasn't the only one. The graveyard has yielded bodies of multiple men over 5 feet 9 inches, and while that may not seem very large today, it was considered massive 5,000 years ago. In the Neolithic days, the average height of a person in China was below 5'5". Most people were probably way shorter. For there to have been a place where the people grew nearly 6 feet, that's unthinkable. It's almost as if the people here were the descendants of a much larger, much more fierce race of giants. Number 1. The Giants of Monte Prama. In a field in Sardinia, there lay dozens of gigantic statues broken and fragmented. The statues were crafted in the Iron Age, but were lost and not found again until 1974. A Sardinian farmer struck a giant rock, only to realize it was actually a stone head. The stone head would turn into one of the most important finds from the Iron Age anywhere in the Mediterranean. And there wasn't just one. There were dozens. We now know these statues as the Giants of Monte Prama. The statues themselves stand roughly 7 feet tall, and each one was carved from a huge chunk of limestone. But these aren't like normal statues from other places in Europe during the Iron Age. They look strange, with faces shaped triangularly, weird eyebrows and noses, and haunting eyes. Their eyes are huge and round, made up of concentric circles, almost like spirals. Now here's where things get even more bizarre. Some historians believe the Monte Prama giants represent an ancient community that lived in Sardinia 3,000 years ago. This society could have beaten back wave after wave of invaders, and they erected the statues as a way to personify their strengths. Others believe the culture had been in contact with some kind of race of giants, stone-chinned men with huge eyes, and so they made these statues in honor of their gigantic friends. Do you believe in giants? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time for more historical mysteries. Bye!